The rain hammered against the hospital windows like tiny fists demanding entry, each drop carrying the weight of Marcus Chen's crumbling world. Standing in the sterile corridor, his $3,000 suit wrinkled from 3 sleepless nights, the tech billionaire stared at his reflection in the glass, a stranger wearing his face, hollow-eyed and haunted. Behind him, machines beeped their electronic lullabies for patients fighting battles he couldn't solve with algorithms or acquisition deals. Marcus had built an empire worth $12 billion, commanded boardrooms across 3 continents, and revolutionized how the world connected through technology. Yet here, surrounded by the antiseptic smell of help and desperation, he felt smaller than he had since childhood. His phone buzzed incessantly with urgent messages from Wall Street, merger deadlines, and shareholders demanding answers. But for the first time in 20 years, Marcus Chen simply didn't care. 3 days ago, his assistant had collapsed during a board meeting. Sarah Martinez, the woman who had organized his life for 8 years, who remembered his mother's birthday when he forgot, who stayed late to ensure his presentations were flawless so she was fighting for her life 2 floors above him. The doctors spoke in cautious whispers about experimental treatments and insurance complications. Sarah was a single mother working 2 jobs, and her coverage wouldn't stretch to cover the surgery she desperately needed. Marcus could write the check without blinking. But Sarah's pride ran deeper than her medical bills. She had refused his offer 3 times, insisting she wouldn't accept charity. Even unconscious, hooked to machines that breathed for her, she had somehow made her sister promise to keep refusing his help. It was the first problem Marcus had encountered that money couldn't immediately solve, and it was destroying him. He wandered the halls aimlessly, his leather shoes silent against the linoleum, past the cardiac wing, beyond the gift shop with its wilted flowers and get-well balloons, until he found himself in the children's oncology ward. Here, the walls exploded with color hand-painted murals of dancing elephants and flying dragons, artwork that tried desperately to mask the reality of what happened behind these doors. That's when he saw her. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, sat cross-legged on the floor beside a vending machine. Her hospital gown hung loosely on her tiny frame, and a pink knit cap covered what Marcus suspected was a bald head. She clutched a crumpled dollar bill in her small fist, staring up at the machine with the kind of concentration usually reserved for chess masters and surgeons. The peanut butter crackers are on the top shelf, Marcus found himself saying, though he hadn't intended to speak. The girl looked up, her eyes wide and startlingly blue. "I know," she said softly, "but they cost $1.50, and I only have $1. She held up the wrinkled bill as evidence. "Mummy loves peanut butter crackers. They always make her smile when she's sad." Something cracked inside Marcus's chest. "Where's your mommy now?" "Getting her treatment." "She tries to be brave, but sometimes I see her crying when she thinks I'm sleeping." The crackers help. The girl's matter-of-fact tone about her mother's pain hit Marcus harder than any hostile takeover or market crash ever had. Without hesitation, Marcus reached for his wallet, but the little girl shook her head. "Daddy says we don't take money from strangers. He's working extra shifts to pay for Mummy's medicine." "What if we weren't strangers?" Marcus asked, surprising himself. "I'm Marcus." "What's your name?" "Lily." She considered this carefully. "But we still just met." Marcus smiled for the first time in days. "You're absolutely right, Lily. But friends help friends, don't they?" Lily tilted her head, studying him with the unnerving perception that children sometimes possess. "You look sad too. Do you need peanut butter crackers?" The simple question shattered something inside Marcus that he'd built over decades of corporate armor. Here was a 5-year-old facing her mother's cancer, wearing a hospital gown, clutching her only dollar, and she was worried about him. "You know what, Lily? I think I do need those crackers. But I have a better idea." Marcus knelt down to her level. "What if we shared them? You get some for your mommy, I get some for me, and maybe we both feel a little better." Lily's face lit up like sunrise. Without warning, she reached out and took his hand in her tiny one. Her fingers were warm and slightly sticky, probably from the juice box she'd been drinking. But her touch carried something Marcus had forgotten existed: a pure, uncomplicated human connection. "Okay," she said simply. "But we have to share fair. Mommy taught me that." As they sat on the hospital floor sharing peanut butter crackers from the vending machine, Lily chatted about her mum's favorite flowers, yellow roses, her dad's terrible cooking, he burns water, she giggled, and how she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up so she could help other mommies get better. "What do you do?" Lily asked, orange cracker crumbs dotting her chin. "I run a big company," Marcus said, then paused. "How do you explain technology empires to a 5-year-old? "I try to help people talk to each other, even when they're far apart. Like my grandma in Phoenix." "Exactly like your grandma in Phoenix." Lily nodded approvingly. "That's important work. People need each other." When visiting hours ended, Marcus walked Lily back to her mother's room. Rachel Morrison was exactly what he'd expected: a thin from treatment but with the same startling blue eyes as her daughter, fighting to stay strong for the little person who depended on her. "Mommy, this is my friend Marcus," Lily announced. "We shared crackers, so now we're not strangers anymore." Rachel's embarrassment was immediate and palpable. "Lily, honey, you can't just ask people to buy you things." She didn't ask, Marcus interrupted gently. "She taught me something about sharing, and about what really matters." That night, Marcus returned to his empty penthouse overlooking the city. The skyline glittered below him, each light representing dreams and struggles and stories he'd never bothered to consider. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a man he barely recognized, a still hollow-eyed, but somehow more human than he'd been in years. He picked up his phone and made a call that would change everything. The next morning, Marcus announced the launch of the Morrison Foundation, named after a brave 5-year-old who had reminded him that wealth meant nothing without compassion. The foundation would provide comprehensive medical coverage for families facing pediatric cancer, ensuring that no parent would have to choose between their child's treatment and financial survival. But first, he had a promise to keep to Sarah Martinez. Pride or no pride, she would get the surgery she needed. Some arguments were worth having. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the children's oncology ward again. But this time the scene was different. Lily Morrison rang a bell mounted on the wall, of the victory bell that marked the end of treatment, the sound of hope made audible. Rachel stood beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face, healthy and whole and alive. "Marcus." Lily ran to him, her hair growing back in soft brown curls beneath her favorite pink cap. "Mummy rang the bell. She's all better." As Lily took his hand again, Marcus realized that $12 billion had never bought him anything as valuable as this moment. A little girl's simple act of sharing crackers had reminded him of a fundamental truth he'd forgotten in his climb to the top. Real success wasn't measured in market share or profit margins, but in the lives you touched and the hands you held along the way. The bell continued to ring, its clear notes echoing through the halls like a promise that sometimes, When we open our hearts to unexpected connections, everything really can change with just one touch.